Hi, I'm Lynn Langit. Welcome to part 4 of learning GitHub Commit Yourself. In this part, we're going to take a look at conflict resolution. So the simplest possible way to resolve conflicts, if you're just using GitHub really for yourself, is don't use any of the branching or forking or any of the fancy stuff. Just push and pull and look at what you're sending back and forth between your local repository and GitHub and verify and resolve it. And what I mean by that is here we have GitHub for Windows client. You can look at each one of the sets of changes and you can say, yes, I want this one, or no, I do not want this one. Now these have already been pushed, but notice you can revert right here. One of the things I find in working with Git and GitHub is you want to use it in the simplest possible way. And in researching and working with other people, I hear all the time people who get confused because it's overly complicated. So if you have a simple, small team and you don't need to branch or fork, don't do it. So, and for some of my stuff, this works just fine. Now, that being said, in other situations, you are going to want to use some of these more fancy conflict resolution aspects. And so let's take a look at them. I've got this tree branch to demonstrate the idea of branching. So the idea is that you have the main or master set of files, and then you branch and you work on some aspect of it, and then you will make some changes and then put that branch, the new stuff, back into master. So that being said, what is a GitHub branch and how do you work with it? Well, the first thing is if you've got everybody owning the master branch, then it's really easy to use. And I'm kind of showing it in an oversimplified way here. You just make a branch, you make your changes, and then you merge that back in, and you can delete the branch if you're done, and you resolve conflicts. So rather than just talking about this, I think it's easier to actually see how it works. And I'm going to do something that probably you've not seen before, because a lot of times you see the command line here, is I'm actually going to go to a repository that I'm a part of that, although I didn't create, I am a contributor on. I'm going to go to this repository in GitHub, and I'm going to just add a file, which is kind of weird because you wouldn't normally do this. And I'm going to say more info, but it just demonstrates the conflict resolution rather than getting the complexity of working with clients and that stuff. And then this is new info. Okay, so inside of here, I'm just going to say more info, and then I'm going to commit this. So I'm actually adding a file, and normally, obviously, you'd use an editor. Okay, so here I have more info. Now you can see that I've made this commit, and we have one branch of our tree right now, the master branch. Now, if I wanted to work on a separate branch rather than just write in master, I can actually create a branch here. So to do that, I can just type it in, and I can say a new feature, and then I'll go ahead and press tab. And now the branch was created, and I'm in the new feature branch. You can see I have two branches. So if I go right here, I've got two different branches. So if I go back, because I'm the owner, I can switch to this branch, and then I can add a file here, and I can say a new feature in branch. I can say this is new, and again, just simplest possible thing here, new feature. You always have to put a commit note and say commit. Okay, so now the conflict resolver is saying you're in this new feature branch, and do you want to merge this back in? Because if I switch new feature and branch, there it is, and I switch back to master, you can see I don't have that feature. Okay, so this is a completely new file. So it makes it really easy through the GUI here, where I can just go ahead and compare and pull request. So inside of here, you can see the master is being compared to the new feature, and my permissions are verified because I'm an owner on this top level repository. I'm a contributor. I can automatically merge. So I can say adding new feature, and then I can go ahead and create the pull request, which is how you communicate to the owner of the repository that you have some code you want to add that you think is going to add value to what they've got. You have all kinds of fancy stuff here. You can put labels, milestones. I mean, obviously this is for, enterprise grade development, but again, I'm going to just go to the simple stuff here. Now, because I'm a contributor, I can actually approve this. So I can say merge pull request. Now, the whole idea with the pull request is that you are contributing to this project on this branch and you don't own the master. And so you send this pull request, which is a method of communicating, saying to the person who does own master, I want to contribute these files. Do you want to take a look at them? And then, do you want to add them or not? But because I'm an owner, I can just merge it. So I'm going to say merge pull request, okay, and confirm the merge. And see, there it is. And now it's telling me, hey, you're done with that branch. You've done your work. Do you want to delete it? So I'm going to go ahead and delete the branch. Okay, and so now if I go back here, you can see I no longer have that branch, and here's my new feature. Okay, so that's kind of the general flow of working with branches. Now, again, I abstracted some things and made it easier because I'm owning everything, which is a little bit artificial, but it gives you an idea of how to work with branches. Now, you don't have to delete them either. You can work for a long time on your own branch, and you can, work and work and work. But one of the things that I showed you here is the best practice, which is to commit frequently. And you'll read about this, and I'll switch back and show you here. You'll read about this nasty thing called a merge conflict. And really what happens is when you have multiple people working in the same file and GitHub can't figure out, because I did a really easy thing, I just added a new file. So it's clear this is a new file. But if you have multiple people working, say, in the main master and then in a branch, and then you try to do a merge, what will happen is GitHub will tell you you're going to have to open the command line, you're going to have to look at this and say which one wins, because it's not smart enough, or it's not really able to look at multiple information in the same text file, in the same coding file, and say which one wins. You have to decide that. So first of all, you can avoid that by partitioning the work, not having developers work on the same file in the same location. That's not always possible, but if it's a really small project, you can do that. Say I work on A, you work on B. However, if they're working on the same file, then you want to kind of plan this and think about it. Do they need to work in the same section? How can you reduce the number of merge conflicts? When I was researching this is where I find like the most confusion. So the way I work with it is I try to avoid doing it altogether. So I don't know if that helps you guys. So you have this concept of branching. Another thing you have is the concept called forking, and that's demonstrated here, which is basically making your own copy of the entire project. Now, they look really similar, and again, people get into a lot of confusion. And the idea behind it is that when you fork, you are not the owner of the main repository. You can't just do a branch and then send it back in. You want your own copy, and your tree or your fork might end up looking entirely different because you may or may not want to contribute back. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like. So inside of here, I'm in this same place, and there's no longer a branch. And let's say I wanted to fork. So I'm going to go ahead and fork, and it tells you fork your own copy to your account. And I'll show you actually just right now. If I go to my account and I go to my repositories, I don't have this repository because I am not the person who originally created it. So if I go back here and I go to fork, it says, okay, where, because I've got, I don't know if you remember from previous videos, I'm part of organizations. Where do you want to fork this? Where do you want to make a copy? And I'll just make a copy for myself. Okay, so now notice it's under my name, has a different icon, and then it's forked. Okay, so now inside of here, if I want to work that, and of course there's no branches. Now if I had branches, they would also be copied because you're making a complete copy. So now if I want to add something here, and I want to say Lin fork feature, because I'm forked now rather than branched, new fork feature, okay, and then I want to commit this, so new Lin fork feature, okay, and then I say here, say commit. Okay, so now this branch is one commit ahead of Isator master, which is where I forked it from. So what I can do is I can compare and say, hey, okay, what's different? And here it shows me it's pretty. I mean, I'm kind of wimping out here. Again, if I was all in the same file, I had some changes from the master and from mine, it would be a little bit more complicated, but I did the easy thing. And just like we did with the branch, now if I want to request to the owner of the original repository to send this new file back, then I'm going to create a pull request. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a pull request. And this looks really the same as the branch. So this is where I think people get a little bit confused. And the idea here is that you have the ability then to merge it back. So it's very similar. And it says it can be automatically merged. And do you know why? Well, because I'm a contributor on this repository as well, which isn't usually the case. If you're contributing to open source, you're usually finding some open source code, and then you're either branching or forking. Forking if you're kind of just going off on your own, usually. Branching if you want to fix something or whatever. And then if you think that what you've written will make the original source better, then you do the pull request. And you guys know what's going to happen here. I'm going to go ahead and merge the pull request, and I'm going to confirm the merge. So in the GUI, it looks really, really the same. And then now I've merged this back in. Now notice I can always revert, of course, just like any of the other commits. So there's nothing new there. Okay. And so now if I go back over here, you can see here's the Lin fork feature. So a GitHub fork creates your own copy, which you own. And although the GUI kind of hides it, under the hood, if you use the git commands, it actually is resolved differently than branching. And I made this little picture to help you to visualize. This first one is a branch off the main repository. The second one is a fork, where there's a complete separate copy, although they look a little intertwined at the top here. And then the third one is both. You have a branch and a fork. This idea of a pull request is a request to the contributor of the repository to accept the updates, and it's often used with forking. Now if you wanted to see these commands in Git, because you'll see them a lot in the tutorials, so you got branch, that makes sense. Checkout is to check out a branch so you can work on it. There's a diff tool, which again we were seeing kind of automatically, that shows differences. And a init, that's just to be complete, that creates an empty repository. And then you can look at the logs, and then you can run merge. Now there's different kinds of merges. There's actually also something called a rebase that writes the history a little bit differently, but again, I don't want to get too advanced here. Now just to give us a little bit different view of this as well, what I want to do is I want to show this in a couple of clients, because pretty artificial to show it up here in the GUI, because you're not really going to be adding files this way. So, but I thought it was easier to understand. So I'm going to go ahead over here, and I'm going to go back to my fork of this. All right, so I'm going to fork it again. There. Okay, so now there it is. So now what I'm going to do, I won't have to do this even here, is I'm going to go to my client. So this is GitHub, or GitHub for Windows. Basically, it's a client so I can work with it on my local machine. So I'm going to go and I'm going to clone, and inside of here, I might need to, here. So this is kind of cool. You can actually see it. So this is the original one, the original repository, and see there's my fork. And it doesn't have a name because it belongs to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. I'm going to clone it. And that, of course, you should remember we'll be making a local copy. Okay, so here's all my commits and everything. And so if I wanted to see this, I could open it in Explorer. And there it is, my TKP talk, right? And so you can see those are my various files. And if I wanted to do something with one of these files, I could open it. Also, I don't think I showed this yet, so it's kind of interesting. See, I have all the git command line, which again, I'm not trying to be super lazy here, but I just think that when you first start, it's much easier to use a GUI. But as I said, if you run into merge conflicts, you actually have to use the command line. So you can see there's the branch that you're on, and the git bash is the shell. So that actually takes you out into the shell for this. Which again, when you're resolving conflicts, it's good for you to see. Now if I wanted to make a change to this, I have to open it with so I'll open it with Notepad, my great fancy editor here, and I'll say and this is new from local, right? And I'll save it. Okay, and save, and save. And of course I have uncommitted changes now, right? So you should remember this from the previous video. So I'll say update. And of course this is going to update them where? Locally first, right? So they're going to update locally. And then I can sync. Okay, so and that's of course going to sync up to the remote. All right, so this is all stuff that we know. But again, remember that we have the ability to look at GitHub. We can revert. So, you know, kind of just seeing how this works. Okay. And now that's syncing. From earlier videos, you might remember I'm using also this web-based IDE called CodeEnvy. And so I'm going to go ahead and log in, and I'm going to create a project based on this fork and show you how I work with GitHub there. So here I am, and I'm going to say import. So now if I go here, and then if I wanted to, I can look at my history, and you can see I get the history pulled down just in, you know, this environment. So you can see I've done a bunch of stuff. Now let me just show you here. And then this is the CodeEnvy tools where you can work with this. So I can diff, I can show diff with index, I can show changes of a certain resource. Well, actually, let me just do something new here. Let me just add something. And from CodeEnvy, so you guys can kind of see how this works. Right? And then I have to add to index. And then, of course, I have to commit, right? And remember where I'm committing here? I'm committing to their cloud, because this is all cloud-based. Cloud commit, but their cloud, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and push. And it's saying where. And if I had a branch, I'd push to the branch. Okay? So push, and successfully pushed. Okay, and now if we refresh this, I have 15 commits because I've got a commit from CodeEnvy, and I also have a commit from my update from local. So, and I can, you know, I can see all my commits, and they all have, you know, IDs, and I can revert back and forth. So again, this is like a super fast introduction to how you can work with both branches and or forks when you're looking at conflicts and resolving conflicts in GitHub. So this is Lynn Langit, and I hope that you will commit yourself. Have a great day.